I wasn't expecting to come home that Wednesday morning. I'd been away since Sunday, only planning to drop by, grab a few things, and head out again. As I walked through the door of the house, the air was stale, like the place had been frozen in time since I left. I assumed Megan, my wife of 7 years, was already at work as usual. My plan was simple: grab what I needed, maybe brew some coffee, and be on my way. But the moment I stepped into the kitchen, my eyes landed on the handcuffs and a strip of duct tape sitting on the table, exactly where I had left them. The scene was frozen in place. The towel I had thrown aside was still crumpled on the floor, the video camera perched on its tripod in the corner, and the chair I'd knocked over remained where it had fallen. Rather than making coffee, I found myself reaching for a bottle of Diet Coke from the fridge, trying to push the memories back down. Then, out of nowhere, Megan stormed into the kitchen. Her voice cut through the quiet like a knife. "Where the hell have you been?" I didn't even look at her. Instead, I walked right past her toward the bedroom to grab some clothes. She wasn't going to stop me, though she sure tried, gripping my arm with a strength that surprised me. "I asked you a question," she snapped, her voice dripping with venom. I stopped, turned to face her. This was the woman I had loved, the woman I had promised forever to, but standing there in front of me now, she was nothing more than a ghost of the person I married. Her betrayal was still fresh, an open wound. "Let go," I whispered, my voice barely audible. She studied me for a moment, probably hoping for some sign of emotion, but my face remained blank, and reluctantly she let go of my arm. Afterward, she quietly started cleaning up the mess, picking up the handcuffs, the duct tape, and tossing the towel into the trash like it was nothing. But it wasn't nothing. I went into the bedroom and started packing my clothes. A small suitcase sat open on the bed, and I filled it methodically, ignoring her presence as she followed me. "What are you doing?" she finally asked, her voice uncertain now, as though she wasn't sure how this was going to play out. "Packing," I replied, not bothering to look at her. "For another business trip?" she asked, her words dripping with sarcasm. "No." "Then where do you think you're going?" I paused, turning to face her. My face still held that same blank expression, the one that had replaced all the love I used to feel for her. "Why does it matter?" Megan's face hardened. "Why does it matter? You're my husband. I have the right to know." I sighed, feeling the weight of it all pressing down on me. "Megan, you gave up that right last Sunday." That made her stop. She just stood there, watching me quietly as I finished packing. I zipped up the suitcase and carried it into the living room, setting it down by the door. From there, I moved toward the study, Megan following close behind, still trying to figure out what was happening. In the study, I grabbed some important papers off the desk, sliding them into my briefcase, then packed up my laptop and its power cord. She trailed behind me like a shadow, never saying another word. Once I had everything I needed, I went back to the kitchen and picked up the video camera that had been sitting on the tripod. I flipped it open, checking to see if the SD card was still in place. It was. I turned to Megan, holding the camera in my hand. "Is this what you recorded on Sunday?" My voice was steady, calm, almost too calm. Megan smirked, her eyes glinting with a twisted amusement. "A little keepsake from your payback." "How thoughtful." I didn't flinch at her words, but something in me shifted. I couldn't stay calm forever. She wasn't just playing with fire, she had set the whole damn house ablaze, and I was burning in it. "For God's sake, talk to me," she shouted, her frustration finally boiling over. I turned toward her, a flicker of anger breaking through my facade. "What did you do to me, Megan?" My voice trembled slightly, but it wasn't weakness. It was raw, unfiltered emotion. "Why are you leaving me like this?" Her voice cracked, and for the first time, she sounded small, vulnerable, even. But it was too late for that. "Megan, sit down." I gestured to the table, pulling out my laptop. "We're going to watch this together. Then maybe we can talk." I slid the SD card into my laptop and turned the screen toward her. The video began to play, the screen lighting up with the image of our kitchen, my chair pushed back, the table ready for whatever twisted surprise she had planned. I watched myself walk into the frame, smiling like an idiot. I had no idea what was coming. "Welcome home, baby," my voice said cheerfully from the screen. "Come on into the kitchen, I've got that surprise I promised you." Megan appeared on screen next, walking into the kitchen in a sheer robe that left nothing to the imagination. Her hair was done up perfectly, her makeup flawless. She commanded me to sit, and I did, still smiling, still completely oblivious. She cuffed my wrists to the chair with those same handcuffs that had been sitting on the table, securing me like it was all part of some playful game. But then she pulled out the duct tape, pressing it over my mouth. Even then, I thought it was just part of her little surprise. I didn't know, not yet. But I was about to. On the screen, she stood in front of me, letting her robe fall to the floor. My eyes lit up with anticipation. "You ready for your surprise?" she teased, and I nodded eagerly, still clueless. Then, the sound of footsteps echoed in the background. I remembered that moment like it was yesterday. My head turned toward the sound, confusion crossing my face. And then he walked into the frame. Joey. My stomach twisted as I watched the moment unfold all over again. Joey, one of her co-workers, strolled into the room wearing my robe like it was his, like I didn't exist. Megan sauntered over to him, a sickening smile spreading across her face. "You remember Joey from work, right?" she said sweetly on the screen, before she undid his robe and let it fall to the floor, right in front of me. I paused the video, the room suddenly too quiet. Megan sat there, expressionless, waiting for me to react. I turned to her, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why?" She shrugged. "You know why." But I didn't. Not really. I stared at her, genuinely confused. "Megan, I don't know what you're talking about." She rolled her eyes, like I was the one being unreasonable. "I told you before we got married, remember? If you ever cheated on me, I'd make sure you saw me do the same thing. And I meant it." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "So, all of this was payback?" I asked, the disbelief clear in my voice. "That's right," she said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "I warned you, and I kept my word." My mind was racing. "Megan, when did I ever cheat on you?" Her face hardened, and she didn't hesitate with her answer. "You know damn well when. You were off on your little business trip last week, screwing around with Liam and some hookers." I couldn't even begin to process the accusation. "What? Who told you that?" "Alexis," she said flatly, crossing her arms. "Liam's wife. She called me and told me everything." I stared at her, absolutely stunned. "So, let me get this straight. You decided to humiliate me like this based on something Alexis told you over the phone?" Megan's expression didn't falter. "Damn right. I didn't need to hear anything else. I knew what you'd been up to." I shook my head, unable to believe how far she'd taken this. "You didn't even ask me. You didn't even try to talk to me, Megan. You just went straight to this disaster, and you don't even have any proof." Her voice was cold as ice. "I didn't need proof. I believed Alexis, and that was enough." I stood there, completely dumbfounded. "So, you tied me to a chair, let another man walk in wearing my robe, and did all of this because of a phone call?" "Exactly," she said, like it was nothing. I took a deep breath, trying to hold back my anger. "Megan, I never cheated on you. I was at a conference the entire week. Liam wasn't even there. He hasn't been part of our group for months because he got fired after cheating on his own wife with one of the secretaries. I haven't seen or spoken to him since. I was working the whole time, sitting in meetings from morning until midnight. Hell, I was on stage half the time, speaking to a room full of people. I've got witnesses, recordings, you name it. I didn't leave the hotel until I flew home." Megan didn't flinch. "So, you're saying Alexis was lying?" "Yes, Megan. She was either lying, or she didn't know what the hell she was talking about. And instead of asking me, instead of trying to figure out what was really going on, you went ahead and did this." I could see her jaw tighten, but she didn't say anything. I had nothing more to give. I packed up my laptop, grabbing the SD card from the camera, and stuffed it all into my bag. "You ruined us, Megan," I said quietly, my voice filled with the kind of sadness I never thought I'd feel. "You acted on nothing but a rumor. And now, there's nothing left to save." I zipped up my suitcase, preparing to walk out of the house for the last time. But before I could reach the door, Megan's voice stopped me. "I'm not letting you divorce me. That's why I did this, to even the score. Now we're even." I turned to look at her, disbelief still written all over my face. "Even? You think we're even now? Yeah, she said stubbornly. We're even. I sighed heavily, shaking my head. No, Megan. We're not. What you did wasn't payback, it was destruction. You didn't just hurt me. You tore apart everything we had. And for what? A lie. Megan stood there, silent, as I grabbed the last of my things. I could tell she was starting to realize the gravity of what she had done, but her pride wouldn't let her back down. She wasn't going to apologize, not yet. Maybe not ever. Megan, I said, my voice steady, I'll be sending you divorce papers soon. And believe me, this isn't something you can fight. I'm not signing them, she shot back, folding her arms across her chest. I gave her a sad smile. You don't have a choice. She tried to keep her face strong, but I saw the flicker of panic in her eyes. Bruce, we can fix this. We can go to therapy, talk to someone, anything. I don't want to lose you. I sighed, shaking my head. Megan, there's no fixing this. You've already lost me. Her voice softened, trembling slightly. Please, don't do this. I made a mistake. I looked at her, finally letting my emotions surface. A mistake. I repeated, my voice thick with frustration. What you did wasn't just a mistake, Megan. A mistake is something you regret the moment it happens. This was calculated. You knew exactly what you were doing, and you did it anyway. Her face fell, tears welling up in her eyes. I warned you this would happen if you ever cheated on me. And I didn't cheat on you. I shot back, my voice rising for the first time. You just assumed the worst and jumped straight to this. You didn't even give me a chance to explain. Megan swallowed hard, looking down at the floor. I told you what I'd do if you ever cheated. You agreed to it. I scoffed, unable to believe what I was hearing. I agreed because I never thought it would come to this, Megan. I trusted you, and you trusted a rumor more than you trusted your own husband. She finally looked up at me, her tears spilling over. I just thought. You thought wrong, I said, cutting her off. But what you did, that was intentional. You can't just throw that away. Megan wiped at her face, trying to compose herself. I'm sorry. Please, we can still fix this. We've been together for 7 years. That has to mean something. It meant everything to me, Megan, I said quietly. But you threw it away the moment you brought Joey into our house. You didn't just break my heart. You shattered it. She sat down at the kitchen table, her head in her hands. I could hear her sobbing softly, but I couldn't let it affect me. I had to keep walking. I couldn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. Megan, it's over, I said, my voice firm but calm. You're going to get those papers, and you're going to sign them. She looked up at me, her face wet with tears. I'll fight you on this. I'm not letting you go without a fight. I stared at her for a long moment, taking in the woman I had once loved with all my heart. The woman who, just days ago, I thought I would spend the rest of my life with. But now she was a stranger to me. You don't want to see that side of me, Megan, I said softly. Trust me, you really don't. Her eyes narrowed, disbelief flashing across her face. What side is that? I met her gaze, my voice cold as ice. The side that can be just as ruthless as you were on Sunday. For the first time, she looked scared, her lips parting slightly as if she wasn't sure what to say. You're bluffing, she said, though her voice lacked confidence. I shook my head. Don't push me, Megan. You won't like what happens if you do. Megan sat there, trying to hold on to her stubbornness, but I could see her resolve starting to crumble. She was realizing that this wasn't a game. This was real, and there were consequences she hadn't counted on. I'm not afraid of you, she said, but her voice wavered, betraying her fear. I shook my head, feeling more exhausted than anything. You don't need to be afraid of me. But you need to understand that I'm done with this. There's no going back. She stood up, wiping her eyes. I'll never stop fighting for this marriage. I'll fight you in court if I have to. I'll fight until you realize what we had and come back to me. I couldn't help but laugh, though there was no humor in it. Megan, this isn't a movie. You don't get to humiliate me, rip my heart out, and then expect me to just forgive you because you fought for us. You didn't fight for us. You destroyed us. She started to say something, but I held up my hand to stop her. I don't want to hear it. I've heard enough. You made your choice when you invited Joey into our home. And now, you're going to live with the consequences. Megan's tears returned, but I wasn't moved by them this time. I had seen enough of her tears. They weren't going to change what happened. She took a deep breath, her voice trembling. Bruce, I'm sorry. I made a mistake, but we can still fix this. We can go to counseling. We can work through it. I shook my head slowly. No, we can't. Because every time I look at you, I see what you did. I see Joey in my robe. I see you laughing while you tore me down. That's not something you can just erase with an apology, Megan. And frankly, I'm not even sure if you're really sorry, or if you're just sorry you got caught. Her face crumpled at that, and I knew I had hit a nerve. But I didn't care. It was the truth, and she needed to hear it. Don't do this, Bruce, she pleaded, her voice barely above a whisper. We've been together for so long. I love you. I stared at her, feeling nothing but coldness in my chest. Love isn't enough. Not after what you did. Megan fell silent, her sobs filling the room. I stood there for a moment, watching her fall apart. A part of me felt like I should comfort her, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. Not after everything. You'll be getting the divorce papers soon, I said quietly. Sign them, and this can all be over. She looked up at me, her face streaked with tears. I'm not giving up on us. I'll fight this, Bruce. I sighed, shaking my head. Then be ready, because I'll fight back. And trust me, you don't want that. Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked out of the house, not looking back. I knew she was watching me, hoping I'd stop, hoping I'd turn around and say something that would give her hope. But I didn't. There was no hope left. When I got back to my hotel room, I sat down and pulled out the SD card, loading the footage onto my laptop. I burned it onto 3 DVDs, knowing I'd need them as evidence. One would go to my lawyer, one for backup, and the last one? That was just in case Megan tried to deny what she had done. The next day, I met with my lawyer. He took one look at the DVD, raised an eyebrow, and said, "This is all the proof we need." "Good," I said, sliding the DVD across the desk. "File for divorce." The reason? Adultery. A few days later, I personally delivered the divorce papers to Megan. I didn't want to see her, but I knew this was something that had to be done face to face. She deserved to know it was real, and that there was no turning back. We met at a small restaurant we used to go to, one that held memories of happier times. When she walked in, she looked different, more put together than I expected, as if she thought she could charm her way out of this. She smiled when she saw me, but I didn't return it. I was already seated at a table in the back, and when she leaned in to kiss me, I turned my cheek. Her face fell, but she sat down across from me, trying to keep up appearances. "Bruce, I made a mistake," she started, her voice soft, almost pleading. "I want us to move past this and get back to what we had." I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. "I agree. It's time to move forward." She seemed hopeful for a second, maybe thinking I was going to give her a second chance. Then I pulled the divorce papers out of my bag and slid them across the table. "Megan, these are the divorce papers." "I've brought a witness," I said, nodding toward our waitress, Lynn, who had known us for years. "Lynn is here to confirm that you've officially been served." Megan's face went pale as she stared at the papers in front of her. I could see the shock settling in as she realized this wasn't something she could talk her way out of. "You're serious," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I told you this was coming," I said, my tone calm but firm. "It's over, Megan." Lynn, sensing the tension, excused herself to get our drinks. Megan sat there, frozen, staring at the papers like they were some kind of nightmare she couldn't wake up from. "I thought we were going to work through this," she said, her voice trembling. "Bruce, I made a mistake. We can still fix this." I sighed, leaning back in my chair. "Megan, you didn't just make a mistake. You made a choice. You chose to destroy everything we had because of something you believed without any proof. You chose to betray me in the worst possible way." Tears filled her eyes, but I didn't feel any sympathy for her anymore. "Please, Bruce, don't do this," she begged. "We can go to counseling. We can talk through it." I shook my head, my voice growing colder. "No, Megan. There's nothing left to talk about. You showed me a side of you I never knew existed, and I can't unsee it. You didn't just hurt me, you broke me. And I can't love you the way I used to." Her tears spilled over as she realized there was no saving this. "I don't want a divorce," she said, her voice desperate now. "I'll fight you if I have to." I stared at her, feeling the last of my patience slipping away. "You don't want to fight me, Megan. Trust me, you won't win." She looked confused, but I didn't elaborate. I wasn't about to explain how ruthless I could be if pushed. I stood up, leaving my plate untouched. "Enjoy your lunch," I said, my voice devoid of any warmth. "I lost my appetite a week ago, when you threw away everything we had." I walked out of that restaurant without looking back, leaving her sitting there with the divorce papers and her tears. It was the end of everything we had built, and I knew there was no coming back from it. A few days later, Megan's world began to crumble. I sent the DVD to her parents, her sister, and a few other people who needed to see it. Word spread quickly, and soon her reputation was in shambles. Her father called me, angry and demanding answers, but I told him the truth. If he wanted to know what happened, he needed to ask Megan. Her life fell apart, bit by bit. She lost her job, her friends distanced themselves, and even Joey's wife found out, filing for divorce just days later. Megan was left alone, the consequences of her actions closing in around her. She tried to fight the divorce, but it didn't take long for her to realize she didn't have a case. The prenuptial agreement was ironclad, and with the evidence I had, she didn't stand a chance. In the end, she had no choice but to sign the papers. The last time I saw her, she looked like a shell of the person she used to be. She had lost everything, her job, her reputation, and me. But even then, she tried to reach out one last time. "Bruce," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry." I looked at her, my heart heavy, but I knew there was no going back. "It's too late for that, Megan," I said quietly. "You should have said that a long time ago." And with that, I walked away for good, leaving her in the past where she belonged. Thank you for visited my YouTube channel. Your support, likes, and comments truly inspire me to create even more engaging content. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. You're a part of this amazing community, and I'm thrilled to share my stories with you. See you in the next video on YouTube.